The first thing I'll do is make the bronze material. I make sure I'm in material preview. I then split the viewport and open the shader editor. I then make a new material for the object. I'll change the metallic of the principled shader to 1, and since this is an old bronze, I'll change the roughness to 0.7. I add a color ramp and connect it to the base color of the principled shader. I changed the white color stop to a bronze color. I'm using the hex code A56628. I'll use a darker shade of the bronze color for the black color stop. I'm using the hex code 6B421A. I add a musgrave texture to the color ramp to help break up the surface of the bronze. I'll make changes to the texture until I find a texture to my liking. I'll have a link in the description where you can learn more about this texture node. I can now move the color stops on the color ramp to get a more refined texture. Now I can add some more details to the material. I duplicate the musgrave texture and color ramp. And I mix them together using a mix RGB node. I changed the white color stop to a different bronze color. I'm using the hex code A5462D. I also changed the black color stop to a different shade of this new color. The hex code is 441D12. Now I make changes to the musgrave texture. I also changed the color stops on the color ramp. To add some dimension to the material, I add a bump node and connect it to the normal input of the principled shader. I then connect the mix RGB to the height of the bump node and change the strength. Now I can add some scratches to the bronze material. I add 2 Voronoi texture nodes. I change the top Voronoi texture feature to F2. I change the distance metric to Minkowski. For the bottom Voronoi texture, I use F1 for the feature and Minkowski for the distance metric. I connect the color ramp to the exponent of the Voronoi textures. I then add a math node and change the function to subtract. I connect the distance of each Voronoi texture to the values. I connect the math node to a diffuse shader. I add a mix shader between the principled shader and the material output node. And I connect the diffuse shader to the bottom input of the mix shader. I change the factor until I see the original bronze material. I add a color ramp between the math node and the diffuse shader. And add 3 color stops in between the black and white color stops. And move them as needed to change the look of the cracks.